I did. Good person.
I see it.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Don't wonder. All around nice guy. He appears in the upcoming feature, Masters of the Universe. You're listening to CBC Radio. I'm Vicky Gabbro. And it's time to sort out some of the affairs in the personal universe that is known as my death. A blight on the universe, you might say. Anyway, I'm going to give a book away. You might recall a few weeks ago I talked to British cartoonist Gerald Stark. I put his book up on the auction block. It's called Stark by Stark. And I thought it would be appropriate if you wanted to sign for a contemporary cartoon or caricature, some part to stick out for him. So then, joys, another copy of the book arrived in the mail, which was a great relief because it meant we didn't have to whittle those contest entries down to just one. We had lots of great cartoons, but there was one that made everyone just scream out loud. Now, picture this if you will. It's a drawing of Brian Mulrooney standing in front of an audience and saying, what Canadians want is capital punishment. And then you look left and you see these thought bubbles coming up from the assembled crowd as they picture Mulrooney with his head in the news. And that one came from Luc Braudet and the steps on Ergo-Bertin of Saint-Rose, Quebec. And the other winner came with a threat, so it was hard to argue with him. Michael Grimshaw of Richmond, B.C. told us that if you win the book, you draw my family. Mr. Grimshaw did, however, stand in two very good caricatures, one of Bill Cosby and one of David Bowie, which I thought at first was Margaret Thatcher, but then I saw the eyes. And actually, it doesn't exactly like David Bowie, so Mr. Grimshaw, please don't be horrified. So congratulations to both of you. We'll send out those books immediately, and thanks to everyone else who entered as well. Now, this coming week, Prince Edward Island at the Charlottetown Festival, they're holding the North American premiere of Alan Bleasdale's play, Are You Lonesome Tonight? But this show about the life and times of Elvis Presley hit a few snags on the way to opening night. Some folks are very upset by the saucy language, and they circulated a petition to get the show stopped. Their efforts, however, failed, and the play opened this week. Leon Powell played Elvis Presley in this production. He's in our Charlottetown studios, and he's standing by. But first, here is the game with Are You Lonesome Tonight?
Here. Okay, can you pull that down just a little bit?
Yeah.
just in this area right here where the rings are very narrow. For 5 years, beginning from about 1977, 78, 79, 80, 81. In here, the rings are very narrow. And those are the years that the trees were protected. And with protection, after 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, and 86, the trees began to grow and recover from being defoliated. And the difference between these trees and the ones you see around us and the ones that we saw just a few minutes ago was that these trees had been sprayed and protected from severe defoliation by spruce budworm, whereas the others down the road had no protection. Those how the branches go up, and then there's a small gap about 2 meters down, the space, and then the trees, then the branches start again. Well, that gap was where the tops of the trees had been defoliated and all the needles removed, and essentially what happened after that was the buds formed and then grew and were protected, and that green part on the top of the tree is the result being protected from spruce budworm. We're in the Moose River spray block, and we're up here looking at forestry, and forestry is the #1 resource industry in the province.
Okay, I think we're going to have a problem.
We're up on the top of Moose River area, and we're looking in an area that's being operated for forestry. Forestry's been going on in Nova Scotia for 200 years. It's the major resource industry in the province, providing hundreds and thousands of jobs and untold social and economic benefits to the province. We've been down to areas down below that have not been protected, and this area has been, and that's the only difference in the history of these two areas. This area was sprayed and the other area was not. The result of spraying is that these trees are alive and are able to reproduce, produce goods and services for the people in the province, and it allows man to carry out an orderly flow of goods and materials from our forests. The spruce budworm infestation in this area began in 1969. Spraying began in this area in 1979 as an experiment. It proved successful, and the program was expanded from that period of time. It was carried on in about 30,000 hectares until about 3 years ago, when private landowners wanted to become into the program. In the first year, we had about 600 landowners apply. The second year, about 800. And this year, we've had over 3,000 landowners apply. Land ownership in the province is 2/3 private land ownership and 1/3 Crown. The Crown does not have the authority nor the right to dictate spray areas within the province. Each landowner must apply. 3,000 landowners have applied, and their views is that a healthy woodlot is both desirable and socially responsible thing to have for Nova Scotia. As I've mentioned, this spray program has been going on in this area. It began in 79 and ended in 82, and the results of the spraying are visible to us all. It's certainly much better to have a green forest than a gray forest.
just open the door.
I can lift the window.
Goes Craig Ogden off to Waz River for a spray session today.
If they don't leave DeBert by what time? They won't do it.
Trenton to Waz River.
What DeBert to watch? They're going to DeBert.
Okay, the weather for 1915. We have a temperature of 21. Winds are calm, and we have an RH of 53. Over.
Okay, we check 1915, 21, calm, 5-3.
That's affirmative. Picked up clear.
Perfect.
The weather for 1915. We have a temperature of 21 degrees. Winds are out of the 36, over.
Okay, we copy 21 Southwest 9 to 15, 36.
Roger, we mountain clear.
Roger.
And over here by the picnic table, we have a little pre-flight preamble prior to a spray session. Chief Pointer Bob Descott. Assistant Pointer Dave Walsh. Russ Miller, Gus's pilot. Jim Burgess, Airport Manager. Al Corcoran, Spray Pilot.
An interview with you? Yeah. Huh? Well, I'd open up the door. I want to have a chat with you for a minute.
Yeah.
No, this is Jim. This is Jim Burgess, the airport manager. How are you at work?
Busy at work. Busy at work.
Tell
tell us, Jim, what are your specific duties?
Well, first of all, I got a lot of paperwork to do.
Thank you very much.
And then what's he gonna do with that?
He's leaving at home.
How's he get back? Which second?
Okay. Just,
Not just since the Lord come out the same thing ever.
okay.
What? Well, here we are in the ATC shack at the Parrsboro airstrip on the Aerial Foliage Protection Program. It's June 22nd, 1987. It's getting near the end of the program. And what we like to do is interview a few of the key personnel involved here in the spray program. The first person that we'd like to speak with is Al Blinn. He's the information officer. And what I'd like you to do, Al, perhaps is go over some of the duties that's involved with you and the Aerial Foliage Protection Program.
Okay. Basically, my job is to keep the information flow going. In a project of this size, there's papers galore, information coming left and right. We have to get it out to the right people. I help the program director, the airport manager, field entomologist, and the chief navigator keeping the information straight. I also help out the navigators with the information flow, help out the ground crew, the ATC, and other personnel on the project. The information flow that I look after consists of starting at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, taking the information from the field entomologist as to what blocks are open for the evening session, and then from there I pass the information on to the chief navigator and the airport manager, help them work up a so-called game plan, and from that information I then pass on to the chief monitors that are out in the field and the field entomologist, and they'll know when to send weather into the airport for spray session, for standby session. Then after the spray session takes place, I get the information from the navigators as to what blocks have been sprayed, and if only partial blocks, what lines have been sprayed. Pass that information on to the chief monitors out in the field entomologists, so they can do their job much better out in the field. And that's about it. But we start again for the 8 o'clock session the next morning, and the information flows, just goes through the same procedures.
I noticed there's some papers out here on the wall and on the bulletin board, Al. Is this part of the information that you look after?
Yeah, it's it's a master list bulletin board, I call it. I keep everything that pertains to the program on that.
Well,
master
perhaps we
list.
go out here and have a little look at it.
Sounds good to me. Further, I just want to mention a little project that the program has undertaken. I've been involved with the IWK telethon the past 3 years, and we've taken pledges. I've got a flowchart made that shows what's happened the past 3 years. First year we've made over $200, and in '86 over $500. And this year we've gone right past our goal of $700. We're up to over $730 right now. But just a little project we carry on here for a good cause. Carry on. The information that comes in creates a lot of paperwork, and things have to be filed in the proper order. I have navigator reports that I haven't filed yet. I file them by block numbers, and I also file them by dates. Weather reports that come in, I file them by date as well. Every date has the weather comes in for that certain date, I just file it. ATC sheets filed here, and everything else, just try to keep things in straight order. Over on the wall behind us is my master board that I was referring to before. I keep all the information that comes in, I keep a record of it as to block openings. I highlight areas once they've been opened in the color of green. If we have blocks that have closed, I highlight them in the color of blue. When a block has been opened, I'll put a date beside it. When it's sprayed, I put another date beside it. Other information I keep in the master list is weather reports that come in bi-daily from the AES weather station, and it tells us what's going to happen over the next 12 hours, basically. I keep payrolls on the board as well, because I look after the payrolls. And another little thing we keep up here is a chart of how much area pilots have sprayed. It just gives a running total, and pilots can look at it and figure out how much money they hopefully will make. After a spray session, the navigators have reports to write up, and we have information that they require, such as ATC sheets, which gives them the aircraft times, weather sheets, which will tell them the weather on the block at the time of the spray session, and load slips, which will tell them how much poop that has gone out on the blocks. We put our slips in here, navigators will come in and automatically know where they are, grab them, do up the reports. Once the reports have been finished and checked, they'll bring them back, put them in an envelope here for me, and I'll try to get the pilots to sign them.
Much, Al. That was very informative, and it certainly does give us a good outlook on what your position is. And here is Donnie Rogers, the ATC for the Aerial Foliage Protection Program. And how are you tonight, Donnie?
Very good, Brian. Yourself?
Well, not too bad.
Got a hole in your armpit, Brian.
What I'd like to go over with you, Donnie, is basically your specific duties as the air traffic controller on the program.
Well, mostly what I do is talk to the aircraft before they taxi out onto the runway, give them wind information and the like, and once they're airborne, I keep track of their times up. When they come back, track of the times down. I coordinate some of the messages between the spray team and the navigational crew, and also any messages and the like from people on the ground crew. Kind of coordinate the flow of information out to the navigational aircraft. Once the spray is finished, I'll normally compile some of the statistics as to how much flying each aircraft did and the fuel consumed, odd things around here. We have two radios to do our work with here. We have the VHF radio that we talk to the aircraft with. Then there's the Department of Land Force FM radio, and it's that FM radio that we get all the weather reports coming in during any given spray session. We may have anywhere from 2 to 8 different weather stations reporting to us every 15 minutes.
That sounds like quite a bit of information for one person to handle.
Oh, well, I have my help. When things get really busy, Big Al comes in here and helps out with the FM. And but most of the time, it's not too overpowering at all.
So most of the time, you know where all the aircraft are, in what vicinity they're at.
Yeah, they tell us what block they're going to be working at when they leave here, and certainly we know what blocks that the spray teams leave for. Well, sometimes it's quiet here because our traffic's spread out between here and, say, Trenton. You know, a team might be working up in Trenton along with a couple navigational aircraft, or gone to the berth. So sometimes things can be kind of quiet here.
Yeah, I noticed that with the amount of aircraft here, there must be 7, 12 aircraft in the air at one time, perhaps. Is there any problems in coordinating that type of traffic once they get it within the vicinity of the strip?
That normally doesn't work out too bad, Brian, because we don't get them all coming back at the same time. The teams are normally separated pretty well, especially this year. We've only had the 2 teams, and it's worked out pretty good. As you know, we have 7 spray planes and 4 172 nav planes, 185, and the helicopter. But lucky for me, they don't all arrive at the same time, or for that matter, take off at the same time. They tend to keep it scattered, and it's not so bad that way.
So at least it's broken up. You're busy sometimes, and sometimes it's not too bad.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks very much, Donnie.
Okay,
thanks
Brian,
for
you
your time.
come back again, eh?
Okay, I'll see you next year.
Next year, eh? Okay.
We have with us here today in the ATC chat as well is Dr. Tom Smith. He's the program director for the Aerial Foliage Protection Program. We previously had a small speech from Tom. We'd like to ask him a few more questions, and then we'll move outside to something else. Tom, can you express the dollar value of forests which may have been lost due to budworm damage in the forests had they not been sprayed?
Well, the median value of the forests that were lost are 10-year supply of wood for 3 mills in the province. And to give you an idea of the size of that, it is a pile of wood that's 7 meters wide by 5 meters tall, all the way from Sydney to Yarmouth by the South Shore.
Why is it that Nova Scotian has chosen to use BTK as opposed to Madacil or phenethion, which is used in New Brunswick when it's more expensive to spray it per hectare?
Well, there's basic reason is that Nova Scotia's had 200 years of settlement and use of the forest. A lot of the forest properties are long and narrow, ranging back from the coast. You still find a lot of areas that people fish, farm, and forest for a living. Also that there is quite a viable blueberry industry in the province, and the buffer zones from a hectare or a quarter of a hectare or more of blueberries is 3.2 kilometers per amino carb and 6.4 for phenethion. And if you take the radius of these buffer zones and put them into the province, there's not much left to spray with anything else other than BT.
So in large tracts of forest land, that would be more feasible to use chemical.
That's correct, and this is what the situation is in other jurisdictions.
I see. Has there been a visual awareness of budworm decline in northern Nova Scotia in the last few years, and can this be attributed to spray or the weather, or perhaps a combination of both?
The population increases and declines of budworm are going to occur independent of man. They occur over continent-wide situation. In the last few years, there has been a marked decline, such as in Ontario, Quebec, Maine, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland, and the stability in New Brunswick and ourselves. These fluctuations go up and down, and spraying really has no effect on their population changes.
That's a cyclic sort of
situation.
But has the spray saved the foliage that would have been perhaps destroyed had we not sprayed in the last few years?
Oh yes, that's very evident when you go through areas that have been treated and not treated. Essentially what's happened in many cases is that the untreated trees have died, and those that were treated have remained viable and increased in their vigor.
I see. I noticed that you use Grumman egg cats outside with a micronair system. Perhaps we could go outside and maybe we could just go over that.
Okay.
Yeah. We're outside here next to a Grumman egg cat, one of the 7 spray aircraft used on the Aerial Foliage Protection Program. And they're equipped with a micronair system for spraying. And perhaps, Tom, you could just go over how exactly this micronair system works.
Well, it is a rotation system. It has 2 cages in it, one an inner core and an outer core. A variable restrictor unit. The spray comes through the boom, through VRU, which has holes in it, and it's restricted side, and the distribution is via the 6 units to give us 2.4 liters per hectare.
The turbine that you were speaking about, Tom?
Yes, that's the system that takes the pesticide out of the hopper, which is in front of the pilot, builds up the pressure and forces it back through into the booms and out through the atomizers.
Do these aircraft come to the program equipped with their own micronair system?
That's correct.
And how much approximately is one of these systems worth on an aircraft?
They're about, the micronairs and the each are worth $1,000 each.
Each of the
6 units.
6 units, that's $6,000 worth.
They are of considerable saving in that we can find the material neat rather than mixed.
Very good. Thanks for your time, Dr. Smith.
You're welcome.
Is it turning?
Yep. Want to get a shot at this one? Game Sanctuary, we come across the cookhouse, bunkhouse, which houses some of the monitors and where they eat. And here are some of the monitors lounging around their vehicles here now. Turning the corner. It's the main camp for the Chignecto Game Sanctuary. And the lab trailer. Today we've moved out to the Chignecto Game Sanctuary, approximately 15 miles northeast of Parrsboro. It's June 23rd, and the last spray session of the aerial part of the program was finished this morning. Out here is the main laboratory, which operates all the field operations. There's 4 satellite laboratories that operate, but all that information is fed through here. Eric Georgeson, he's the field entomologist. He's here with us today, and he's going to go over basically most of the functions that operate out of here. There's 14 people approximately that work here, covering a radius of 45 miles, not including the satellite labs. What I'd like Eric to do is go over some of the functions of the monitors and what exactly they do in the field and in the lab.
Okay, well, essentially what we're doing is we're taking an assessment of the budworm population as it moves through its various larval stages. And by means of taking foliage samples out in the field, this is how we determine how far along the larva is. For example, Rob is working away at sorting out a development. Essentially what we do, we take some branches out of the field, bring them in here, we pick through them, pick the worms off them, until we have approximately 100 larvae, or as close to 100 as we can get of the sample. Then we put them under the scope and measure the width of the head castles. And from this we can determine what larval stage the budworm's in.
Is there any particular reason, Eric, that you choose 100 budworm for the sample?
Yes, 100 is an easy figure to work with. It also gives a good representation, and it also drives the monitors crazy getting 100 out of very scarce areas.
I see.
Well, you asked me. Another thing too is that generally we start this about the middle of May. At that point, the larva is in the needle, and the boys actually have to dig the larva out of the needle. Once you get up to this stage, it's a little easier because they tend to be wandering around loose at the end of the program. So a little easier to find, but as we get closer to spray time, we often have to take them every second day. In some cases, if we got very hot weather, we'd be taking them up to once a day, taking the development out of an area, if we don't have too many to take at the time.
Yeah, I've learned a few of these terms while I've been around this program. Development, pre-spray, pupa counts. Is this a development here that Rob's doing?
Yes, it is. And from that we determine the budworm index. We create what's called a population spread, and we determine from there where the peak is in the larval development, or where the wave is. And it's possible, if weather conditions remain consistent, to develop a regression line, which can crystal ball to some extent. Normally, we don't predict any further ahead than 24 hours whether or not a block is open.
I understand there's a microclimate kind of situation in northern Nova Scotia, so I understand that you don't take these developments just from one tree and classify it for the whole area. You take them from different areas for different areas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we take the treatment areas and we cluster them together. First priority, of course, is the species involved. For example, white spruce or blocks consisting mainly of white spruce are all piled together, and blocks consisting of red spruce are all piled together into what we call clusters. Now, a cluster consists of one block or one treatment area, or it can consist of up to, we had 16 in one cluster. And they're similar not only in species, but they're also similar in their rate of development that budworm develops. And from that, we can judge either to open the whole block together, or if we find while we're doing development some variety in the blocks, we can take from different areas. It seems to grow more complex each year that we do it. Sometimes, as in Wentworth this year, we actually went in there and ended up sampling one cluster about 3 different times per week. Fortunately,
opening and closing, I guess that's referring, like an opening would be prior to spray or pre-spray, is the term I've heard?
Yeah. See, we're not only looking at the larval development, we're also looking at the foliage development. For example, the budworm can be fairly well advanced, but the problem is that if the budworm's underneath that cap, he's protected. We can spray, and the biocide will land on the cap. Of course, once the cap falls off the bud, the larva is all right. So we have to wait until the caps fall off the foliage. We have to wait until the budworm is out roaming around, and at that point, we can probably get very good control. So it's sort of a game of kicking stones or incredible patience as you wait for the budworm to get into this stage.
Have you ever ran into a situation where the budworm's advanced so far along that and the bud development hasn't, and doesn't that leave you in a predicament?
Yes, 86, we had a lot of that. We lost quite a bit of area in 86 because of that. Actually, we had conditions where the budworm was so large that the forepart of the budworm was under the bud cap, whereas the tail end was sticking out from behind because he was so big he couldn't get under. In cases like that, the block will open, say, in the morning and be closed again after the evening session. Budworm development normally takes about 4 to 5 days to go from, say, peak 4th instar to peak 5th instar. But when you get hot days, warm nights, this decreases. This can take place in about 32 hours, 32, 36 hours. I had that occur a few times. Makes it interesting.
I take it that the budworm development and the shoot development is only coincides with BTK or a biological agent. Like if you used Madasil or phenetrathion like they use in New Brunswick, you wouldn't have to worry about this situation?
You would have to worry about it for a certain extent, but your spray window is a lot wider. The problem with biocide, or any biocide, is that you have a very narrow time to get it. The budworm has to be right, the foliage has to be right, the weather conditions have to be right. And this reduces the time somewhat, and this is why we have to be so accurate in our predictions in the field and be able to monitor it constantly so that we can find that spray window so that the people at the airstrip can utilize it.
Right. So I take it that there's situations where the budworm just gets so far along because of weather or other reasons that you just have to close a block, and unfortunately that area doesn't get sprayed?
That's right, yeah. You have to shut it right down. We generally do, we try to do at least 2 developments now to determine whether the block is down, just in case, because of these microclimates that you spoke about earlier, that the monitors didn't happen to get out and get in the microclimate where it was very warm. And of course the budworms they picked in a very warm one would be quite further advanced than on the average of the block. Generally when they go out to do a development, they pick branches from several blocks, come back, distribute them among the various pickers, so that you get a wide variance, a better picture of what the block is doing.
So these pre-sprays, that's you go out and collect foliage prior to spray. I was up in a spray session one morning, and I noticed that during spraying that there were some monitors running around there with pole pruners picking foliage off trees. Is that just because of the time situation, or are they sleeping? Or
no, that was a time situation. Normally we try to pull the pre-sprays out before the block is open. We can usually determine sometime during the morning or early afternoon when the block is going to be open. So the monitors will go out, and they, of course, they have to sample the top third of the tree, same as the developments. And they take a branch off each tree in a plot. Now, each block or cluster will have a certain number of plots in it, maybe up to 10.
Numbered trees, certain trees.
10 plots, and there's 10 trees in each plot.
I see.
So if you've got 10 plots, you're talking 100 branches you've got to pull in a very short time, so that the block is opening anyway. You've got to pull them before you spray. Now, if unfortunately you get out there late, as happened a couple of times, they're going to have to pull those right away, even when the spraying is taking place. Now, the catch is, of course, once that's brought back to the lab, normally we can store those pre-sprays in a cool room for up to a week, week and a half. If it's been sprayed, then we've got to process them right away. They have to pick right in the morning, which has happened.
Wouldn't, even though they sprayed and you pick the foliage and put them in the cold storage right away, wouldn't that stifle the budworm enough that they wouldn't be roaming around and eating the foliage anyway? Like there may not be any effect?
We've tried that one year and found that there's mortality. As soon as the thing thawed out, the bacterial growth would rapidly accelerate. And of course, you end up with the bloodworm for a while remains solid, and very soon turns liquid with the bacterial infestation.
So that, I see. So that would
kind of makes your counts very awkward, because you have to count on pre-sprays. You've got 45 centimeter range, and you've got to count every worm on that.
right.
Of course, we do efficiency studies to add to the nightmare of doing this, and we do a constant update on these efficiency studies, so no one falls below 9%.
Right, so you want to keep the statistics within proportion
Oh,
of what you're doing.
so we can add a correction factor.
Right. Okay. This other term I've heard is pupa counts. What's a pupa?
Okay. Pupa, of course, it goes through the larval stage, and then it forms a hard shell. All right. The hard shell, of course, is called pupa. From out of the hard shell comes the moth.
Oh, it's like a cocoon.
No, not exactly a cocoon, but along the same lines.
Right.
It's a resting stage or another development stage. And this is how we tell how effective the spray has been, or how effective your treatment has been. We know our pre-spray counts for those marked trees. We go back when the pupas are at peak, and we take some more samples, and we count up what's on the branch. And from that, we can determine how effective spray, and that we also got check plots outside the treatment areas. So we know what the expected is, what the expected mortality is in untreated areas. We look at the mortality in the treated areas, and we compare them. So we say, okay, if we didn't treat, we would have lost, say, only this month, but because in the treatment area we lost, say, 50% more, therefore our mortality, we have mortality there. But of course, mortality isn't what we're shooting for, it's foliage protection. And we gather that data at the same time we do the pupa, in that we take foliage samples and we look at the shoots on it, and we class them by degree of defoliation on a 10% increment scale. So from that we can gather our data.
Have you noted in the years of spraying, I take it that you've probably sprayed the same areas over and over again, that there has been a substantial amount of foliage protected as opposed to an area that was outside the treatment area?
Yes, yeah, that's a relatively new thing, and we're gathering data for that now, Special Project Lab. And what is going on, we found, for the last 2 years, there hasn't been very good conditions when the moths emerge. When they come up in the foliage normally, it's usually during the summer, hot weather, they get caught in the updraft and blow all over the place. So this sort of takes away advantage of treating an area as far as controlling the population year after year, normally. Now, the last 2 years, we've had rainy, cloudy weather when the moths are coming out, so they just come up, flutter from tree to tree, and then lay their eggs. And we haven't been getting population buildup in our blocks, a lot of our blocks that we had in the past. And we found that quite outstanding this year. That's the reason why a number of areas have been dropped because of low counts. They've been high, relatively high outside those blocks, but in past treatment areas, they've remained very low.
Now, I talked to Dr. Smith about this, and he said that it's been a cyclic type of time in the population. They're coming near a decline because it's happening all over North America, in Ontario, in Maine, in Quebec.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and Dr. Smith is talking about the overall general picture, whereas I'm just talking about a very local condition.
I see. Okay, I understand.
So we seem to be experiencing a decline, a general decline. It's not a collapse, but just a decline. Now, we don't know if it's going to continue down, if it's just a little depression in the curve that's going to go up again. Next year will tell, will give us more data toward that.
So it's safe to say that both the weather and the spray, acting in combination with each other, probably has hampered the population growth.
To a great deal.
Is that right?
In the northern areas anyway, for the treatment.
Well, thanks, Eric. Maybe what we could do is maybe just wander around the lab here. I noticed there's some people working, and you could just briefly...
Okay, this is the picking room, as it's commonly called. I have other designation for it as the laboratory sample processing area. What they're doing now is the pre-sprays that I spoke about earlier. And here we have 45 centimeter branch that's been cut from the top of the tree, bagged, and now clipped up a little bit. So they're going through each bud and each branch sample looking for larvae. And of course, once they find the larva, they record it down the tally sheet. There's one thing about this job, there's a tremendous amount of paperwork involved, along with labor. Some of these people, what time did you guys get up this morning? Some of you?
3.
3. So they've been going since 3, they'll probably going about 8 tonight, I'll cheer you up. Doing this. Now that we're finished spraying, we're at we have to catch up before the larvae for these branch samples spend too much time in the freezer. As you can see, we don't have a full crew in here yet, because some are still out in the field gathering samples. We're also gathering, I believe, one development. At this point, too, we start gathering developments and start looking for pupa. It's a rather time-consuming process, and at times extremely trying on the patients, especially if you get foliage where there's not a terrible amount of worms. Fortunately, this is not too bad, some that we've handled this year. Now, if you could come in here, I can show you development that's underway. Once the material is collected for development, some lucky technician will have to line it up, and from there attempt to measure it underneath the scope. Okay, Rob, let's measure that. It's all based on a number of divisions in an eyepiece in the scope. So not only do you have to get the worm in focus perfectly, you also got to get that little scale in focus. Of course, it never fails. Everybody has a different eye requirement. So normally we pick someone to be scope person, and usually they wrap up this end of it. Rob is also recording data from the pre-sprays on another form, which goes from there to the computer. So we have all the modern technology out here, including a fantastic counter, which we inherited from the feds. Modern.
I noticed over here on your desk, Eric, are these cards with names and numbers on them. What exactly do these represent?
Oh yes, this is how I check up on the navigators. And these are chrome kit cards. You can't see anything on them now because the droplets will fade out. We put a number of these around each plot. We put about 5 around each plot. And as the spray droplets come down and land on the cards, it forms a stain similar to butter on paper, ordinary paper. The catch is that this stain tends to fade out after 6 hours, so you got to count it within 6 hours. Sometimes if you don't get back to the lab during a evening session, say until 11 o'clock, you still have to count these until they're finished. If they got lots of drops on it, and we've had some with 64 drops per square centimeter, you're all set. But if they have 0 drops on it, that means those plots, they haven't received any insecticide or biocide. So we pretty well have to dump the samples because we absolutely know that these are already counted.
So this all pulls into part of just gathering statistics for a general analysis.
Yeah, we call it the pyramid project because you pile so much data in to work your way up to one small 3-page report.
So these may not get sprayed due to block being closed or spray plane not going over the plot that was desired.
That's right. There was a lot of misadventure. For example, one set of plots we had out the spray aircraft. The one spray aircraft that went over them ran out of biocide about half a click away.
I see.
It wouldn't have been so bad except the guys have been out there for 3 days trying to get those cards sprayed. But it's okay. They got lots of patience.
The percentage of them do get
oh yeah,
sprayed apart.
yeah. We only lose about 20%. 80% get treated, one way or another. The data that we gather up, for example, we usually fill about 4 of these now with raw data. And from that, we distill it down into the final report. There's a lot of bits and pieces that we gather that we're not even getting into right at the moment.
So the rest of the information still has to filter in from your satellite labs.
That's right.
For an overall picture.
They filter into me. I place it on computer, or my computer guy works the computer. He places it on the computer, and from there we start assembling bits and pieces together to get a report. And sometimes when you go through, you find there's gaps. So you got to go back through all these paper records to find these gaps there to fill them up.
What I've seen at the Parrsboro airstrip and what I see out here, there's heaps of paperwork to be done. Like, what time of the year do you end up finally getting some sort of summary on this whole program?
Okay, under the old system, years ago, sometimes we didn't get a report until February. Under the system that we're analyzing the report ourselves within the department, we've been able to get the report out on, say, November. Now with the computer system that we started up last year, last year we cranked it out sometime, I think it's September. And I'm shooting for August this year. Now I think I got the bugs out of the computer. Once we get it in the computer, hardest part's getting it in. For example, on my main summary program, for example, maybe one form would equal one category on this, and I have 30 categories. Sometimes it's 3 forms equal one category. It can be distilled down, but it's all in how you're feeding it into the computer. I'm not basically a computer person myself.
So needless to say, the computer's probably saved you 3 or 4 months of extra work.
Oh, easy, yeah. You still need personnel to gather the stuff, and you still need a body to type it in.
Mm-hmm.
But where it saves is what you do with it afterwards.
Well, thanks very much for your time, Eric, and going over that. What I'd like to do now is perhaps get a couple of your technicians and go into the field and see what they do out there.
I'm sure we'll get some volunteers.
Thank you very much. Here we are leaving the Chignecto Game Sanctuary from the field lab. We're going to be following these monitors out to an area where they're going to be getting a development, and to an area where they'll be getting a pre-spray, and to an area where they'll be getting pupa counts. We're out here in the field now, in back of the Chignecto Game Sanctuary, where the monitors are going to do some field work. And here to my left is Art Doan. He's the chief technician here for the group of 14 individuals working out here. And, well, Art, I'll just let you carry on and what exactly these guys are going to do.
Okay, first of all, Ron in the blue and Eric over here in the white. They're putting together pole pruners. There are 5 of them that can go together. We try to reach the upper third of a tree. Right now we're going to get a development, and we use a tarp if the budworm index is over 2.5, and you have to be careful that you get an exposed branch in the upper third of the tree. And they're just putting pole pruners together now, and going to go over to get a development.
These things look like they could be kind of tricky when you get 5 poles on them.
Yeah, especially if the wind's blowing, you have to be pretty strong to hit the tarp, especially.
This is a 2-man operation generally?
Yes, it is, yeah. It's usually 2-man. After they get the branch on the tarp, they snip it up into a bag. They bag the branches for development if the index is over 2.5. If not, they just drop it on the ground, put it in a garbage bag.
And this is taken back to the lab, and what I saw Rob doing, looking through the microscope and measuring head caps.
That's right. That's right, yeah.
So 5 poles are are there, but not necessarily necessary if you can get in the upper third, correct?
That's right. Right. What they would do is take that branch, cut it up, put it into a garbage bag. If the index is under 2.5, if it's over, you put it in a paper bag and take it back to the lab.
We're out here in an area now where the monitors are going to be gathering up a pre-spray sample. Art, what do these letters and numbers represent?
Okay, in a pre-spray, we set out 10 marked trees, and one 45-centimeter tip is taken from each of the trees. And during a pre-spray, you have to be careful not to shake the branches to let the worms fall to the ground. You have to make sure you hit the tarp. And again, you take them back to the lab after they're bagged, and you have to be very careful that you get all the worms. So there are 10 trees per plot.
So I guess you shouldn't really be shaking that branch off when you're trying to get it down. Eh?
You have to be very careful not to lose any worms or pupa later on. There. What it's going to do now is snip the foliage up into small pieces, putting it into a brown paper bag and marking the bag, indicating the plot as well as the area. As you can see, there's a worm that's fallen off the branch onto the tarp, and that worm is usually thrown off the tarp and marked on the outside of the bag. You get all that.
You pick up all the foliage.
Make sure you pick it all up, yeah.
What's the idea of using the masking tape to seal the bag?
Well, you have to be careful that the worms don't crawl out of the bag, which they will if it's not sealed properly, because they have to go from here back to the lab, and you could have them in the back of the truck in the hot sun for a couple hours by the time you get back. So.
And they'll start crawling around inside the bag?
Yes, they will.
Inside.
Yeah, they'll crawl outside through any crack or opening. So make sure it's sealed very well. So you'll end up with 10 bags per plot. They're put in a garbage bag, flagging tape around the garbage bag indicating the area that's taken from, and back to the lab.
We're back out here again in the back of the Chignecto Game Sanctuary. Spraying has taken place, and we've come back to the same spot where we took the pre-sprays previously for pupa counts. And Art Doan is here with us again, and we'll just let him carry on what exactly is going on here.
Okay, the method used to gather post-spray is similar to pre-spray, the exception being you take two 45-centimeter tips, and you usually come out when the budworm is pupated. At least 50% of the budworm is pupated. This usually occurs around the middle of July, and the same procedure is followed. The branches are snipped up, put in brown paper bags and labeled. Any pupa found on the tarp is put back into the paper bag and taken back to the lab. And what they're checking for here, of course, is mortality. In a pea plot, that is a plot that has been sprayed, you want some indication of the effectiveness of the spray.
What's the point in taking 2 branches on the pupa as opposed to 1 branch on the pre-spray?
I think it gives you a better sample, better indication of mortality.
So we're talking statistics here.
Yes, yeah.
Looks like you have to become pretty professional with these pole pruners.
Yes. Just make sure I hit the tarp, and on a windy day that can become a problem. But they get plenty of practice in it. So by mid-July, they're pretty good at it.
How many P plots and C plots, like in the area that you look after, would you say you had?
Okay, that varies per cluster. There are 15 clusters that I have, and depending on the size of each block, the number of P's and C's vary. In a big plot like this one, Chinecto, I have 10 P's and 10 C plots. So it varies anywhere from a single plot to up to 10.
Again, the 10 plots in the sprayer would account to get a better overall view of statistically wise.
That's right, they're spread throughout the block. Make sure you get a good sample and selection of trees and so on.
What? Well, I heard this term instar. Right? What instar would these worms be in when you come out for these pupa counts?
At this stage, approximately 50% of the budworm are in the 6th instar, or the pupa. 50% are 6th and 50% pupa. Okay, pupa would be the 7th instar, and the moth would be the next instar, okay, or the 8th. So you try around the middle of July. Usually, you have 50% pupa.
So at this stage too, when you come out for the pupa counts, you're more apt to see mortality in the budworm.
Yeah, you can see that a lot of the pupa are in fact dead. A lot of worms are shriveled up. You can see the effect of the spray where the gut tract is shrunk, and it's a lot easier to see what effect the spray has had.
We're out here today during a spray session. We're at or near one of the spray blocks, which will be sprayed here. As you can see, it's a high overcast day. The temperature's low. The humidity's up. That's why we're out here in the middle of the day. During this type of climate, we can continue spraying most of the day long. And over here to my right, there's a mobile weather station set up, and they're taking the weather here and sending it into the Parrsboro airstrip. Art, maybe you could just go over exactly what this mobile weather crew does.
Okay, first of all, you try and find a site that's exposed and open, not a sheltered area. And what Ron's doing now is using a sling psychometer, which is trying to determine the RH factor. He's used distilled water on the wet bulb. There's a wet and dry bulb reading, and he'll spin that around for approximately a minute and take the difference between the readings, wet and dry. Use a conversion chart to figure out the relative humidity, which is important when you're spraying. There's certain limits which are allowed. Eric is using an emitter, or a wind speed indicator, and again, wind is very important. During the spray, you cannot go above a certain level, and this particular instrument reads in knots, and again, he has a conversion chart for kilometers.
What are the parameters for spraying, Art?
Well, you try and the wind, for example, has to be no higher than approximately 15 clicks.
Clicks?
And
What's clicks?
kilometers per hour. And as far as the wind is concerned, you don't like conditions that are real calm as well, because the spray doesn't come down as well in calm conditions. The temperature you have to take. You can't spray when it's too hot, for example, after 10 or 11 o'clock on a hot day, because of the heat units, convection currents, and so on. You get the spray will rise. So all these factors are taken into consideration when you're spraying.
So it's 18 degrees Celsius for temperature, 35 to 95% relative humidity, and winds at less than 15 kilometers?
Yes, that's right.
And what happens after you take all this? Is this noted or sent anywhere?
Every 15 minutes this is done, and it's called and radioed in to the airport from all your sites, and they note this as well and determine whether or not to send the planes out if the factors meet the requirement. Right now Eric is using the radioing the airport and giving them the conditions that he's just.
Parrsboro Airport. This is Chicago weather station.
This must be similar to the portable system FM set up there.
Roger.
Is that correct?
That's right. At 12:15, we have a temperature of 16. The winds are from the east, median of 5, with no gusts, and the RH is 7.2. We have no rain, no dew. Over. Roger, Parrsboro. That's a check. Parrsboro clear.
Usually give another 2 to 3 readings after spray is completed, and they usually send them home probably a half an hour after the last spray session.
What time in the AM do you usually come out and start taking a trend?
Okay, the monitors have to they usually leave the lab 3 to 3:30 to get out to a site. Some sites take an hour to get to. The first weather reading usually goes in at 4:30, 4:15 or 4:30, and the actual spraying probably doesn't begin until 6:30, sometimes 7 o'clock by the time the conditions are right. But they have to monitor the weather over a period of time so they can get some trend. And they can go up till 10 o'clock in the morning. And then usually they come back by 6 o'clock that evening. They'll give it the next weather report, 6 or 6:30. And they can spray right up to dark if the conditions are good.
This has been an unusual day, being out here pretty much in the mid-afternoon taking weather. Kind of tiring.
Yeah, some of the monitors put in 18, 20 hours a day, and that can go on for a period of a week or so. So they get pretty tired, but they're a hardy group.
Oh, well, thanks very much for your time, Art.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're back here at the Parrsboro Airstrip, and on my left is Jim Burgess. He's the airport manager. We previously had Jim in a more compromising position, but we have him here, and he's going to go over the ground operations of the spray program, talk about a little bit about the mobile unit that works, and go over what exactly the ground crew does. So Jim, this is your realm of activity, so I'll just let you just go around and maybe explain what goes on here.
Okay, Brian, I guess we should start with the where we get our BT from. As you can see, the drums there, we get the BT, arrives from the States in 45-gallon drums on a transfer trailer. We dump it off here. We use that pump that you see right there, and we can suck it out of it and put it in our storage. It takes about 45 seconds to drain a drum with that pump system. And it goes into these 2,000-gallon mix tanks, 44 drums per tank, and there's 4,000 gallons, which keep us well ahead of it. That's enough for 6 team loads goes up. Next we have the water tank there. That's just for flushing out the planes and also for fire purpose. We can use it if we have any fire around the tank farm. We're ready to go and get right at it. We used to mix this with water, but now we're applying it neat, and we don't need that water anymore. Okay, this is our gas storage. We sort of keep it away from the tank farm as best possible. There's 4,000 gallons of aviation fuel here, and we sometimes have to fill up these a couple times. This year, a smaller program, we went through 4,000 gallons. You can look at the system, the pumping system on this. We have 2 pumps in case one of them fail. We have a meter. We have to meter it when it goes into the Cessna planes, whose two silver things are a no-go gas filter. We have to take all the precaution we have. There's definitely no smoking in the tank farm area.
What exactly are these filters for, Jim?
Okay, it filters any water. These tanks sometimes get some condensation in it, or any dirt that may be in their tanks, or that comes from the factory. We clean our tanks out every year, get all the rust and what have you out, but we don't want to take any chances. Okay, we go out the line here, and as you can see up in the header, we can fuel 3 planes at one time, and the same as we can fill the goop into them. We can load with the BT 3 planes and fuel them at the same time. Takes about 10-11 minutes to fuel and goop 3 egg cats.
So these nozzles I see up here in these boxes, that's for the fuel, I take it.
That's for the fuel. We try to put that out of the way so it'll keep the dust out and the rain off it.
I see these other black hoses up there too, Jim. Maybe we could just walk up there and have a look at those.
Okay. Before we go at the header, I'd just like to point out this. There's 2 different types of fire extinguisher. This dark red one, if we have a fire, if the plane backfires and we have a motor fire, we're to use this on that particular fire. It will not hurt the motor. If we use the other one on it, it could get sucked into the motor and we could ruin the motor. We use the orange ones just for gas fires around the header. Hopefully we won't have any. Okay, let's have a look at the meters and the header now. This system here comes out to a T, and this is just 1 pit. We have 3 pits. Like I said earlier, we can load 3 planes at a time. We don't have a plane here right now, but when we hook up to a plane, it's a dry brake system, and if I could show you how to do it.
Sure.
Okay. This is the part we hook on the plane, and we can't lose any VT because that will not open unless this brass part here, unless they're hooked together. And that is always on the plane. And it works easy. Okay, watch it, Brian. Something come out. Once that goes in, we can open the valve and the BT will flow. Once that's opened, we can't take it off the plane until we shut it. So that way it's just a safety feature that we won't lose any BT. And as you can see, there's very little spilt BT.
So this attachment here is hooked onto the aircraft hopper.
That's right, yeah.
I see.
Okay, if we want to look at the metering system here, we have a couple safety features besides the dry brake. If a plane is taking 240 US gallons, we'll put 910 liters on it. This meter system is a reverse system. Right now we have 350 liters in there. As this decreases, this will increase. And this will automatically shut off when it reaches 350 meters. If for some reason we need it shut off before, if there's a broken hose or whatever, we just have to press that button and it stops there. If that doesn't work, we can rush over and shut this valve off. So there's very little spilt VT around the header.
Safety is definitely a #1 priority in this area then.
Right, we're a handy community and we don't want any problems. Introduce the Dan McDonald. He's my right-hand man here on the tank farm, and he sort of looks after everything out here in the project. Dan's been with the project now, what is it, Dan, 4 or 5 years? 5 years. And I'll get Dan to introduce the ground crew.
Okay, we got Tim Blake here. Been on the program since it started, 9 years, along with Bill Moore, 9-year man. Steve Forbes, who just started this year. And as Jim said, our main purpose around here is to load the planes, look after the pumps and equipment, and help out the pilots as much as we can. When we get ready to pump here, we have one guy on each header. Bill usually takes number 1 header out there to load planes. At the same time, yeah, you can head out there, Bill, and at the same time he usually tends the gas for the little planes come in there, and the pilot may jump up in the wing on his load at the same time. Him usually takes the center one, does the same thing there, and Steve will head out to number 3. And what we usually do is check the planes when they go out. We make sure they got a full load when they go out. And when they come back in, the first thing we do is check the hoppers to see how much they got left in them. And as I say, they unhook the planes and they make sure the pilot gets his gas while he's in there, and then they're off. At the same time, we always have a man back here on the pump, on the VT pump, and he can always be. He starts it, he watches the fellows on the wings when they're loading the planes. If there's any kind of a problem at all, or if we've got enough in them, he immediately shuts the pump off here, so there's no. Try to eliminate chances of any broken hoses or any problems at all. And that's about it for here. And a lot of extra fittings, hoses, and planes. If we happen to need anything when we're working around here, we just have to hit in here. And our fire truck we have to use on the project here. We have it mainly for extinguishing any airplane fires if we happen to have any. It's an old Dodge truck, and it's equipped with a 400-gallon water tank on it, and it also has a 300-foot live hose reel. You can pull out pretty quick. It's easy to handle. We on the back have a jerry can of gas and a Wajax pump, which can run the whole unit if needs be. Every morning we come out before the spray starts and start the truck and the pump at the same time. Make sure they're going to be working. We also have a bottle of AFFF on the back. This is a foaming agent, and all you have to do, if you have to have the truck for a fire like that, one guy can jump in the truck, take off down the runway, another guy can be on the back, and he has to dump the foam into the tank. And when the water is sprayed out the hose, it comes out in a foam. We have 2 pumps on it, one mainly for loading. This is just a lightweight pump that we can put down at the brook, and it saves a lot of gearing up the other ones with suction hoses. We have a long green hose over here that we can park roughly 100 feet from the brook and pump into the truck. And that's about it for the truck.
It happens today that the ground crew happens to be here at the Parrsboro airstrip because we're just cleaning up prior to ending the program. They operate a mobile unit with a single aircraft and doing some ground spray. And I'm going to let Doug Barrett here, the supervisor of the operations, just talk a little bit about exactly what he does.
Okay, Brian, we have a tag-along trailer which is normally on the back of this truck, and we have an oil truck which carries approximately 2,000 gallons of BT. The trailer contains the large pump which pumps from the oil truck into the aircraft. We can just load one aircraft at a time, and we operate out of smaller airports. We also carry fuel for fueling these aircrafts, and that's about it as far as that goes.
How much BT does your larger tank truck hold for can you get one load into them or 2 loads?
No, we carry about 2,000 gallons, so we can load them several times.
I see.
This unit here we are using for spraying some of our provincial parks. Terry Lloyd here and myself have been operating this mainly in the evenings after the people have left the parks, just for convenience sake. In here you'll see a microneer, the same as on the aircrafts, and in the hose line at the back of the unit there's a Norfus size 83, which will give us the proper application. Our pressure gauge is there, and we operate at 25 pounds pressure and drive the vehicle approximately 5 miles an hour, and that will give us the same application as though we were doing it from the air.
Well, spraying at night would really keep you within guidelines of your environmental restrictions anyway, wouldn't it?
We've operated most evenings. We've had no wind at all. The evenings we have had some. We've been well within. Terry, perhaps you could grab the switch there and just show them how the boom works. There's two switches there. One to pump the BT out, and the other one will move the boom up and down the canopies.
How high can this boom spray, Doug?
It'll spray out 100 feet or better.
So you can get both upper and lower canopies.
Right. Yeah. And also you'll see here is a light which we just hook up to our battery, and that we can see exactly what we're spraying. We found it very effective.
Just before closing down the airstrip, here once again we're like I previously said, we're ending the program. Just like to point out some of the buildings here in the outer field. To the left here is what we call the Sugar Shack. It's a picnic table in it. We keep our coffee in it, donuts for the morning. Just a place for to relax a bit in between things. And as you move on to our right, you see, well, first of all, you see our mascots. They're down here at the foot of the door. We don't consider ourselves tacky, but they're just a mascot to the program. And it's in the forefront here of the navigational trailer. Inside is where the navigators do all their work. There's a wall map. This is where we keep our 250s, our 1 to 50s, and our ortho photographs, and post-spray reports, navigator reports as they're called. And moving along to the right again, we visualize the ATC shack, the air traffic controller shack, which houses well, the air traffic controller. The information officer works out of here. He has a desk and a counter to work. And in the back of the trailer on the left is Tom Smith, Dr. Tom Smith's office. And he has his computer in there and is constantly updating the program on the amount of hectares flown and areas that are sprayed.